Tonight, you will hear a simple secret carried by streams and temple bells, a practice that generations of monks and ordinary people have used to steady the heart and sleep with a gentleness that feels like coming home. As the Buddha said, "A peace comes from within, do not seek it without." And in these 3 hours of tales, you will be invited to notice that peace for yourself. These are not complicated rituals. They are short stories, gentle instructions, and reminders that work even if you have never meditated. Make yourself comfortable now. Adjust your pillow, soften your jaw, loosen anything tight around your neck. Breathe in slowly through the nose and exhale fully through the mouth once, twice. Feel the weight of your body settle into the mattress or chair. You may close your eyes if that feels safe. Sit or lie as you prefer. With each exhale, allow a small part of the day to drop away. Over the next 3 hours, let these stories move through you like a stream, each one offering a key to loosen a knot. There will be quiet moments to breathe, short invitations to attend to the senses, and stories of people you might recognize in yourself. No belief is required. Listen as if you were by the edge of a lake at dusk, receiving an old friend who speaks plainly. In the first story, you will stand at a riverbank where water has its own wisdom. Later, you will visit a garden of strawberries, a tea house where a cracked cup teaches a lesson, and a mountain path where an archer learns how to aim without grasping. Along the way, Dogen, Hakuin, and other teachers will offer a few words to anchor what these tales point toward. If your mind wanders, return to the breath, as simple as noticing the rise and fall of the chest. This time is for healing and reflection, not doctrine. Allow the sounds around you to blend with the voice. Allow the voice to become a soft lamp for what you carry inside. We begin at the river. You stood on the bank that first morning as if you had always belonged there. The river moved with patient purpose, clear in places and dark in others, and a small wooden boat rested against the pebbles. The boat was empty. A fisherman named Sumi approached you with the slow step of someone accustomed to waiting for the fish to decide. He spoke first, his voice worn by wind and kindness. "You see the boat," he said. "When it is empty, it floats with the river and does not fight the current." You asked what he meant. He laughed a quiet laugh and answered, "We cling to stories as if they keep us afloat. A story of insult, shame, a long to-do list, a memory of loss. The boat carries those stories. When it is empty, we move." You asked whether empty meant forgetting. He shook his head and said, "Not forgetting, not pushing away, allowing. An empty boat can contain a thing and let it pass. The current is the teacher." His hands smelled faintly of riverweed and smoked fish, and in the sun his skin seemed to hold the map of old storms and calmer seasons. You nodded and asked how one empties a boat. He looked at you as if you had asked a child's reasonable question. "By noticing what you hold," he said. "First name the weight, then breathe with it. See it as a thing in the hull, not as you. That distance is a space where the current works." You felt something unwedged in the stern of your chest, maybe a small relief that came as a coolness along the spine. The sound of the river was a steady consonant under his words. Later that afternoon, a woman named Akiko brought a basket of wild strawberries to the dock. She sat and told a different story of how she learned to let the boat be light. "My father would fill every hole with worry," she said, "and my mother would tell small stories to calm him. I learned both habits in equal measure. One teaches to carry everything. The other taught me to taste what must be tasted and leave the rest." Akiko held out a strawberry so bright it seemed to hold a small sun. You tasted it. Sweetness spread across your tongue, and for a moment you were simply a mouth and the fruit, and the river was nothing more than a soft curtain. In that simple savor you felt the principle the fisherman spoke of. The story closed like a hand releasing a stone. The interpretation is gentle and practical. The empty boat teaches you how to separate the self that observes from the stories that cling. In practice, this looks like pausing before answering, naming the emotion that wakes inside, breathing once, and choosing whether to act. Dogen wrote that attention is the small mirror that keeps itself clean. Practice that mirror by naming what you hold and placing it in the boat without judging it. The next tale came on a storm-gray afternoon when you met a monk named Thomas and a tiger that was more a story than a living beast. Thomas had grown up near a trading road where stories came in loose bundles, and he learned early to listen to the roar of other people's complaints. One day he encountered a tiger in a marketplace story. He told you the tale at a low table while rain ticked on paper windows. "People told me a tiger had taken their harvest," he said. "The tiger was fear in all its costumes. They wanted me to remove it. I found it curled under a hedge of words." You asked Thomas if he fought the tiger. He smiled with his mouth and not his eyes. "I did what any monk could do, and what a third person can do," he said. "I fed it patience and did not feed it blame. It grew smaller and warmed itself and then disappeared. Perhaps it walked away. Perhaps it turned into a fox and left another lesson. The shape is never the point." The rain had a steady texture. The smell of wet earth came through the window, and the little saucer of tea you sipped tasted like soil and sky. A third person at the table, a teacher named Leela, added that most tigers are made by repeating one small grievance until it becomes a mountain. She explained a short practice: 4 breaths to notice the first hot spike of reaction, and the next 4 breaths to imagine a cooler color, a blue shade, settling into the area behind the sternum. You tried it. The heat of a memory loosened like a knot untwining, and the tiger in the tail shrank. The lesson was direct. The 2 arrows teaching applies here. As the Buddha taught in a simple image, the first arrow is inevitable. You may be struck by pain, by the cruel word, or by loss. The second arrow is the story you tell about that pain, the commentary that doubles it. 2 arrows double suffering. Seeing the first arrow and not firing the second is a skill, not a moral achievement. Thomas became a living example of that skill and offered a small ritual for when you meet your own tiger. Sit for 3 breaths and say silently, "This is burning." On the next exhale say, "This will change." Keep that pattern and you will notice the heat descend from the throat to the belly, and the story will lose urgency. There was a pause after the tiger story where you were invited to breathe with the weight of the day. Close your eyes if you have not already. Notice the sounds around you for a moment. The clock, or the breath, or distant traffic is part of the present landscape. As you exhale, let your shoulders drop. Feel the soles of your feet, or if you are lying, feel the points of contact with the bed. This practice is small and immediate. It is not performance. It is an invitation to arrive. A few stories later, you met Nora, a young teacher who carried a backstory that shaped much of the lesson about seeds and grief. Nora grew up in a house where silence meant danger and noise meant safety. As a child, she learned to fill space with chatter to avoid the pauses where adult sorrow lived. Her father, Ezra, was a craftsman who left early and returned with pockets full of apologies, and her mother, Mi, tended a garden that offered consolation in green things. In adolescence, Nora discovered books that spoke of presence, and realized that silence could be a shelter rather than a threat. She left the town for a monastery year and learned zazen in the cold stillness of the cavernous Winter Hall. There she met a teacher named Ravi, who guided her through small koans not to trap her mind, but to loosen its grip on stories. A turning point came when a friend died unexpectedly. Nora carried a heavy seed of guilt and thought she must fix the past. Over time, she learned that grief is a seed that does not always need to be planted in action. She could sit with it, water compassion, and allow it to sprout and change forms. Now she teaches children to name feelings as if they were seeds, and to learn when to plant and when to hold a seed in the palm until it softens. This backstory shows how early habits of safety can shape adult reactivity, and how presence can reframe threatened silence into calm attention. Another protagonist, Sumi the fisherman, offers his own 3-paragraph backstory. He was the youngest of 5 children in a coastal village where the sea provided both abundance and the teaching of impermanence. As a boy, he watched his older sister Haru give away a small loaf of bread to a traveler when their family had less than enough. That act of generosity lodged in him as a compass. He apprenticed with an elder named Kenji, who taught the practical craft of mending nets and the more subtle craft of mending the heart. Sumi learned that the world will take from you and give back in its own measure, and that resilience is not a steel shield but a flexible reed. After a test of loss in his 20s, he traveled to a temple where an older monk guided him through months of sitting with the tide charts and the breathing of waves. He returned to the river with a practice of noticing the weight of what he carried and learning to untie it slowly. That experience shapes how he speaks to others. These backstories connect childhood, formation, loss, and presence. They anchor the next set of tales that revolve around presence and savoring. In the strawberry garden, you met a small cadre of characters, including Akiko, Haru, Kenji, Mara, and Tomas, each with their way of being present. The scene is bright with sensory detail. Sun pooled on leaves, insects hummed like a distant chorus, and the smell of warm earth rose as you bent to a low bush. Akiko taught you to taste with the whole body. She said, "To truly taste a strawberry, you must be willing to be nothing but a mouth for a moment." She showed you how to place the berry on the tongue and attend to its texture, not hurry to swallow, and let the taste teach you about the fleeting sweetness of moments. Mara, who had been a baker in another life, noted the warmth around the stem and how our hands remember heat as comfort. Leela spoke softly about Ichigo Ichi, the idea that each meeting is once in a lifetime and to be honored. In that garden, you practiced savoring and noted that presence is not always serious. It can be light and full of gratitude. The teaching here is practical for evenings and mornings alike. Try this after your next meal. Take one bite without distraction and spend 3 full breaths exploring it. This technique transforms routine into ritual and trains attention. At approximately 1/3 into our time together, you may feel like sharing. If you have arrived this far, you might be settling into the rhythm. If you feel moved, pause and write a single word in the comments below to say which of the last 2 stories touched you more: the tale of the empty boat or the strawberry in the garden, and one brief reason why. Your word helps others find a story that might fit their evening. We value short replies because they are easy to give and easy for others to receive. Once you have written, return your attention to the breath and the next story, which will explore how the mind narrows and then can be widened again. A longer tale followed about 2 monks and a river that required a more extended dialogue. The scene begins with rain and the creak of a cart. 2 monks, Sumi and a senior brother named Ryo, walked toward a shallow ford where a young woman named Hana waited with a small bundle soaked by weather. The elder monk offered to carry the woman across, and the young monk hesitated. Dialogue began and extended as they navigated duty, habit, and inner reaction. The exchange had 8 turns and served to reveal hidden attachments. "We must not touch the woman," said the senior at first, testing. "It is a breach of monastic rule," he said with a quiet tone. "But she needs help," replied Sumi, voice quickening. "Rules hold a heart safe," the elder answered. "Compassion is not a rule breaker," Sumi insisted. "Compassion without care can create harm," the elder said. "What harm comes from a hand steadying a stranger?" Sumi asked. "The harm is in attachment," the elder replied. "I would rather carry her across than carry the heat of judgment," Sumi said. A pause, held like the river remembering the steps of those who came before. The elder then spoke softer. "Then walk with your heart open and your mind awake. Carry her gently and do not let the memory of the carrying become a thing you clutch." They carried the woman across, left the bundle on the other bank, and returned in silence. On the way back, Sumi felt a small burden lift that had been lodged under his ribs for years. The scene teaches how compassion can be practiced without grasping the image of being compassionate. A reflection followed, where you were invited to notice when you act for recognition and when you act for the sake of the other. This is a subtle distinction, but one that changes how the heart rests. Not all lessons are gentle. There are moments of tension that test the habit of presence and require decision. One such moment involves a stone heavy enough to unbalance a small community. A traveling merchant named Tomas returned to his village with a debt that could not be paid. People pointed fingers and rumor fed heat. In 2 paragraphs, you feel Tomas wrestle with shame and the choice to leave. The air was thick with accusation, and the marketplace smelled of dust and spices and the metal tang of old anger. Tomas stood before his neighbor Kenji, who had always been both friend and creditor. "You left me no place to stand," Kenji said. "You owe me." Tomas bowed and said, "I know. I can leave and spare you more trouble." Kenji looked at him with a softening that was not pity but recognition of shared imperfection. "No," Kenji said, "we both have caused harm. Sit. Tell me what happened." They spoke for a long hour in the shadow of the fig tree. This moment shows that tension can be transformed into community repair when someone listens without firing a second arrow. The memory that arises when you are publicly seen and judged is a particular wound. Naming it aloud and asking for a listening ear is one path toward resolution. Another tension arose on a mountain trail with an archer who could not release the bow. The archer was named Ravi and had trained for years to master aim. He held tight to rules and outcomes and could not tolerate a stray arrow, much less a failure. His teacher, Haku, watched him as the wind moved the grasses around their feet and said, "You aim for the perfect shot and forget the moment." Ravi replied, "If I let go, the form will be lost." Haku answered, "Form without openness is a prison. The arrow needs both the hand and the sky." The exchange extends across 3 paragraphs as a struggle of identity. Ravi thought of his father, who had called him a stone when he failed, and he felt that same old shame rise. Haku guided him through a breathing practice, 5 counts in and 5 counts out, and asked him to loosen his grip a notch on the 3rd exhale. The first time he released the arrow with that loosened hold, he missed the mark by a little and laughed with surprise. The second time, the arrow found a new place and hit with an ease he had not expected. This riddle of control and letting go echoes the larger practice of living without clinging to self-images. Throughout these tales, you will meet a cast of named secondary characters who move the stories and give them weight. There is Haru, the generous sister who taught Sumi, Akiko, the gardener who held strawberries like small sons, Kenji, the neighbor who listens, Mara, the baker who remembers warmth, Lila, the teacher who carries Ichigo Ichi, Ezra, the craftsman who offered apologies, May, the mother who tended green consolation, Tomas, the traveling merchant, Hana, the woman at the ford, Rio, the elder monk, Ravi, the archer, and Nora, the young teacher. Each of them reacts in a specific moment and helps shape the narrative arc. They are not background extras. They speak, make choices, and leave traces. Interspersed are quieter parables about the cracked teacup and the man who learned the measure of giving. In the teacup story, you meet an old potter named May who once broke a beloved cup and kept it because it had served family tea through births and funerals. She considered it ruined until a child named June used it to catch a fledgling that had landed in the house. The bird slept in the cracked cup, and May saw the cup become shelter rather than an object of perfection. The conversation between May and June is a warm sequence of lines, 6 exchanges long. "Why keep the broken cup?" June asked. "Because it remembers all the hands that held it," May said. "Can a broken thing still be beautiful?" June asked. "Beauty is not a requirement for usefulness," May replied. "Can a broken person still be kind?" June asked. "A person can be both broken and generous," May said. "Then the cup is like us," June concluded. The potter washed the cup and put it back in the shelf. The technical note here is simple. The process of repairing the cup can be practical, like rinsing, sanding the rough edge, and painting a simple glaze to seal the surface. There is no need for ornate repair. Simple care restores usefulness and humility. There are also explicit process descriptions when skills appear. When Kenji shows how to mend a net, you hear step by step the small ritual. He untangles the loose thread with slow fingers, threads the new cord through the existing loop using a small knot that he learned as a boy, then tests each strand by pulling with measured force. He speaks while he works, naming the tension in the cord and the place where the wear is most likely. The words make the action precise and kind, and you feel the repetition as a calming metronome. The two arrows image returns later in a modern example. A project manager named Ezra receives a harsh email. The first arrow is the sting of being criticized. The second arrow is the narrative he constructs about failure. He closes his laptop, breathes, and writes a short note to a colleague asking for one detail. In a conversation that follows, he realizes the email had been sent in haste and contained assumptions. By noticing the first hit and not firing the second, he prevented a day of agitated emails. This story grounds the old teaching in present-day life and gives you a practice to borrow. There are moments of decision that feel like testing the muscle of compassion. Once a leader in a village named Ravi refused to condemn a young woman accused of stealing. The village wanted an example. Ravi instead arranged a hearing where both the accused and those who were harmed could speak without interruption. The hearing was long and at times awkward and tasted of old grievances. In the end, the woman apologized for a mistake that had roots in hunger and fear, and the village organized a small fund to prevent future need. This practical action shows that ethical choices can be concrete and restorative rather than merely punitive. As the stories moved toward the later hours, you heard about perspective change and mastery. A master archer taught that true skill is not about hitting the target, but about releasing attachment to outcome. A master named Hakuin is quoted in a whisper, a short line that grounds the practice. Hakuin once said that the true practice is to stand in the rain and not complain that you are wet. It is an image of acceptance and fluidity. The mountain scenes are rich with tactile detail. The scent of pine resin, the rasp of boots on gravel, the cool sting of altitude on the cheeks. These images are sensory invitations to bring attention into the body. In the final sequence of narratives, tension reaches a peak. There is a heavy stone in a village square that families had believed could not be moved. A traveler named Mara proposed a simple experiment. The village gathered and pushed together using ropes and steady breath. For a while it did not budge, and frustration swelled. Then a child named June suggested they sing as they pushed. The rhythm of song transformed the energy, and the stone shifted. This three-paragraph moment holds the strain, the memory of ancestors who failed, and the choice to try together. It shows that cooperation plus creative attention can move things we thought set in stone. The tale is both literal and symbolic. Near the end, you listen to synthesis and integration. There is a long passage where the narrator weaves themes: impermanence, presence, ego, compassion, and the small practices that accompany them. The voice alternates between second person and third person, bringing you into the room and then stepping back to describe the scene. The repetition of small refrains helps them land. "A peace comes from within" is one such refrain, used with gentle insistence. The narrator suggests a night practice. Before sleep, breathe 4 times and say gently on each exhale the phrase, "I release what I do not need tonight." Make this the last small ritual of the day and allow the body to sink. The epilogue is given in 3 temporal sections to show how these stories might unfold in your life. 1 month later, you may notice small changes. You will have practiced naming one emotion before reacting, and you may find that a rise in irritation now lasts only minutes instead of hours. You might have used one story like a tool in the people you live with may remark that you are quieter or easier to be with, and you will notice this without needing praise. 3 months after this practice, the new ways of pausing will begin to solidify. The seed of presence you planted with small rituals will sprout into an ability to hold discomfort without needing to fix it immediately. Your sleep may deepen. You might find yourself reaching for a breath because it is familiar now, And in 1 or 2 situations, you will behave differently without thought and feel surprised at your own calm. 6 months on, the habit will have a steadier root. What was once effortful will become part of how you move through days. A community habit may begin around you. Friends or family might ask how you became less reactive. You will remember these simple tales and offer them as stories to others. In time, a small ripple can become a quiet current that carries people toward more restful nights and kinder mornings. The epilogue shows not a promise of perfection, but the likely arc of gentle change if you continue to practice small acts of attention. Before closing, there is a small invitation to join an ongoing community. If these stories offered you relief, consider subscribing to the channel for more sessions and short guided practices. That choice is not required and carries no moral weight. It is simply a way to access similar stories when you need them. If you are moved, share one short word in the comments naming which story helped you most. These small exchanges build a quiet network of practice. In the final minutes, you will be guided through a short ritual for sleep. Lie down or settle in. Take a deep breath in for 4 counts and out for 6. Do that 3 times. Feel the exhale longer than the inhale. Imagine each exhale as an invitation to release a small worry. Repeat silently this phrase: "A peace comes from within." Allow the phrase to be a lamp, not a task. If thoughts swim up, notice them as passing shapes and return to the breath. Picture your mental boat on a wide river with room for clouds and fish and small passing debris. Your job is not to clear the whole river. Your job is to notice and to release what you can. Feel the weight of your body and the steady, ordinary rhythm of breath. Let the last echoes of these stories settle like leaves. Thank you for sharing this time. As you fall asleep, you may briefly recall one of the faces you met tonight and smile. Remember 2 practical things to carry. First, name the feeling before you react and give yourself 4 breaths. Second, savor one small thing each day, small enough to fit on your tongue or the palm of your hand. 1 month from now, you may feel less hurried by emotion. 3 months from now, small practices may feel like second nature. 6 months from now, your nights could be more restful and your mornings gentler. If one particular tale touched you, tell us which word fits best in the comments to help others find what might help them. If you would like more stories like these, subscribe and make this channel a quiet place to return to. Now settle, breathe and sleep knowing that the peace you seek was never somewhere to acquire. It was a place you can live in by simply turning toward the breath. Good night and rest well.